Hey everybody, I thought I'd throw a tutorial together on a couple of beginner issues that you're probably running into. I ran into them. I've been in Unreal for about a month now, and I just committed that every time I ran into an issue that didn't have a really good video for it, that I'd create one myself. So that's what I'm doing here today. So two things that I'm going to help you solve. One is permanently setting the pivot point on a static mesh to a spot that you want. And the other issue is assigning multiple materials to a static mesh. So what do I mean by that? I'll just navigate around here a little bit, but I'll just pick on the desk for now. So one, the pivot point here you can see is a little bit out away from our static mesh, and so if we move that desk around, sometimes you'll get pivot points that are like way out from an object, and it causes you some problems. You can in Unreal set that pivot point temporarily to a location, but as soon as you click away and go back, it resets, which is super annoying. So we can solve this really easy in Blender. The other thing that I wanted to solve for you was, you'll notice this desk has 5 or 6 different materials assigned to it, which is great. But sometimes you'll find a static mesh, especially if you've created it yourself within Unreal, that only has one material assigned to it, and that has various problems. So I'm going to show you where these problems sort of came up in my project here. I've got, I've just got a little school set up, got some functionality the kid can do, but I'm going to navigate over to where our issue is in the school. Oh, wrong way. Right. Over here, this wall. So here, I'm just going to escape out of here and I'll show you the two issues. So one, if I click on this wall, pivot point's okay. I'd rather have the pivot point down here. If you look at this door though, look at that pivot point. So when I'm moving it around, like if I want to zoom in, like I can't play with that pivot point. Again, I can set it temporarily, but as soon as I click away from that door, the pivot point goes away. So really annoying. The other issue that we're going to solve is, so this static mesh has one material assigned. So let's just say I'm completing my school. I want to use the same material as the other walls and put it on there. So let's just find that. This is white wall. I'm just using the magnifying glass to find the material within my huge structure of content. Whoops. Anyways, there it is. And I'm going to apply it to this wall. So that looks great on the inside. I mean, I'd obviously have to bake the lighting and fix that. But, that would match. The problem is if I go outside and I look at the wall, it now is white. And that doesn't make a lot of sense. Conversely, if I obviously picked a brick material and threw it on there, we'd have a similar issue. Boom, right? Bricks on the inside of the school looks bad. I mean, you could hack job your way around this. You could build another mesh and put it in front and block it, but I mean, that's a pretty terrible way of doing this. So I'm going to show you the right way using Blender. And then just quickly before we jump into that, I'm going to show you how I created this static mesh, because maybe some people are new like I am and didn't know how to create their own static mesh. So anyways, up in the top left in modes, under brush editing, you want to select the brush editing mode. And then when you go back to place actors and you select geometry, and then you drag an item in, it'll bring in a brush. If you have a material selected, like I do, when you bring in the brush, I'm just going to try and get this somewhere here, the brush is going to be filled with the material that you had selected. So we don't want that in our case, so I'm going to unselect that, delete this brush, and bring back in a new brush. So there's your brush. But an important thing to note is a brush is not a static mesh. They're different. I won't get into all of the details right now. There's lots of tutorials out there. I'm not going to show you exactly how to manipulate a static brush. But anyways, here's our brush. What I did want to show you is I created this wall as a static brush to start, and then once I had it the way that I wanted and I had everything else set up, I converted it to a static mesh. And the way that you can do that is select your brush, go into details, and then scroll down to brush settings, And in here, there's a little button in the bottom right that allows you to create a static mesh. So you hit that. Standard settings are fine, no problem. And now you have this static mesh. And this mesh, you'll notice, has the same problem as my wall does. Let those shaders compile. And you can see that it's only got one material assigned to it. And that material goes everywhere. So we didn't want that. So how do we fix that? Okay, let's delete that and I'll show you. So let's use the real example of this wall that's a problem for me. And what we'll do is we'll adjust the pivot point and we'll adjust the materials that are assigned to it. So just going to delete my search content there. I'm going to hit the magnifying glass with my static mesh selected. I'm going to hit the magnifying glass to find it. And there it is in my content browser. I'm going to right click on that, go to Asset Actions, and I'm going to export it. Because we're exporting it into an FBX so that we can take the FBX into Blender and make some adjustments. In this case, you'll get the save window. Make sure you navigate to where you want and you remember where it is. Mine's like 8 levels deep because I've got a billion things going on, but here I'm just going to call it School Entrance Wall and make sure that it's saved as an FBX. Hit save. You'll get this window that pops up. And in this window, you can just use the standard settings. It's fine. So now you'll have an FBX in the location that you just saved on. And we can flip over to Blender now. So let us do that. I am going to shut this one down. Oops. Yeah, there we go. Fine. And then we'll bring up Blender. So here's Blender. You can just pick a general. You can delete that. I just hit X. This is a standard cube. When you open up Blender, it's just got the standard cube that you can start with. You can play around. And we're just going to hit X and delete it. And then we're going to import. Scroll down to FBX because that's what we exported from Unreal. And then we're going to navigate to where we saved our FBX file that we exported out of Unreal. Again, mine's in Unreal, Assets, 3D Models, and then I have something called School Meshes here. Yeah, there it is. And then what did I call that? School Entrance Wall. So we want to import that. And there is our FBX, or our static mesh, that we exported out of Unreal. So the first thing I'll show you, and this is for the folks that are figuring out the pivot point, in Blender, your pivot point is right here. It's this, I don't know, little circly thing that looks like a life preserver. Anyways, what we want to do is we want to line that up on our mesh. So what I'm doing is I'm hitting the middle mouse button and holding it down, and then I'm moving the mouse and it's allowing me to sort of spin around the object. So there's, for me, the only problem I have is I want to get this pivot point probably down in the center here. So what you can do is you can hit G. You can select your mesh, so click on your mesh, and it should select the whole thing. And then you can hit G, and then you can move that around. But it's moving around on any axis however it wants to. So I'm just hitting Escape. In my case, the only axis I want it to move on is Z. So if I hit G, and then I hit Z, you'll see that little blue line pop up. And now when I move my mouse, it only moves on the Z axis. So it makes it really easy. So just go through that again, hit G, Z on the keyboard, and then I just move my mouse up, and then once I have it where I want it to be, I just left click. And there, now I've set the pivot point. If that's all you want to do, you could be done. You could export your FBX, import it back to Unreal, and now you've set the pivot point. But for our case, we also want to add materials to this object. So I'm going to go through how to do that. So to do that, what you want to do is you want to switch from object mode in the top left, and you want to go to edit. Now we're in edit mode. The other thing we want to do is right next to edit mode, a couple things over, a couple widgets over, there's this face select. We want to click that because that'll allow us to select faces. So you can see now that I've got that selected, I can pick the little triangles on the face. So what do we want to do? We want to assign in a material to each side of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the face, and if I hit Control and then left click, I can select as many faces as I want. So I'm going to select all of those faces because those are the ones that I want to add a material to. On the bottom right in the material section, material properties for Blender, If you click that, all these different widgets will just adjust the screen that's over here on the right. So if I, click one, a different screen comes up, but I want the materials properties, and this is the materials properties window. So with my faces selected, I'm going to hit this little plus sign in the top right corner of the materials properties window. And what you'll notice is, before I do that you'll notice that the world grid material is already on here by default. So what that is that's those different tone, gray tone cubes that are on by default as your material in Unreal. That's what that is. So anyways, you hit the plus sign, you get this, and then you get a new option here, and you want to click the new option, and what it does is it generates a new material for you. So by double clicking on the name, we want to name everything just so that we're organized, and I'm going to call this inside. I'll just call it inside. And then the other thing that I want to do is, because the colors don't matter, I'm going to change all the materials when we're back in Unreal anyways. I want to pick a bright color so I can really see it in Blender and make sure that I can see the changes that I made. So I'm just going to pick something pink here. And then the other thing, with your faces still selected, you want to click this little button assign. And you'll notice that when I click that, whoop, something didn't work. Let's try this. And I click assign, and it should, I forgot a step. My bad. We want to change the display. So the other thing in Blender, I forgot to do this, my apologies. In the top right, where these little baubles are, you want to pick the third bauble. And that just gets you to the viewport shading setting, and now you can actually see the colors change. So my bad. So if we were to go back a step, reassign the world grid material, boom, let's start from the beginning again. So with our faces selected and this viewport shading, you select all of your faces like so, create the material, then hit assign, and then you'll see it go pink. There you go. So that's one face done and one material assigned. So that's the inside wall. On the outside, we want to do the same thing. Select all our faces, and remember, it's middle mouse button held lets you sort of circle around, and if you scroll wheel, you'll zoom in and out. Those are the only two things that you'll need for this tutorial. Anyways, selected the faces. We're going to hit the plus sign again. We're going to hit new, and then we're going to rename our material to outside. We're going to click on the base color. We're going to pick a different color. And then, most importantly, we're going to hit assign. And now you'll see that we have two different materials assigned. You could stop right here. I'm going to go all the way, and I'm going to also create materials for the outside of the doors, just in case I ever need that. I'm going to do the whole thing because in my project it's hidden, so I'm just going to put that as one color. We'll create a new one, rename it. We'll call this outside frame. Color, make that one blue. Sign, so we just double check that it worked everywhere. It did. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to zoom in with the scroll wheel. Sorry, I should say last two things. Is I'm going to do the inside of the door frame, and then I'm going to do the floor. So select all those faces. Sometimes you'll notice when you click, it clicks both, and you can see them highlighted. So there, it was just one click, and it got both of them. And here I'm going to add a new material. Yeah. And we'll call this one door frame. And we'll pick a color, yellow-ish. Hit assign, make sure that it applied. It did. And then last, we're going to make the floor, new material, double click, floor, get a new color for it. What haven't we used? Maybe a bright red, and then assign. And the reason I use the bright colors is then it's very obvious whether or not I change the color. If I had left it as white or gray or left them the same, you can't tell. And here it's very obvious. I've got 5 different materials assigned. I could go and delete this world grid material at this point, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so now what we want to do is we're done. We've moved the pivot point because we used G to grab our mesh, and we put it in the location that we wanted. So our pivot point's there, and we've adjusted the materials for the different faces. So we're going to go up to File and Export in Blender. We're going to select FBX again. We are going to go back to our same location. Hopefully you're not 8 levels deep like I am. School, nope, it was 3D models, school meshes. School meshes, and then we're going to pick, you could rename it something else. I'm just going to show you here quickly. School entrance wall. If Blender doesn't give you any warnings. If you hit export, it's going to overwrite that file. The only warning that it does give you is this is in red. If you had named this something different, the red should see it. Now when I deselect it, it's not in red. But as soon as I have the same name as something else, it'll go in red, which is fine. In our case, it's fine to overwrite it. It's our export. On the right, you're going to want to only have the bottom 3 items selected. These other ones, you can have a camera in Blender, and you can have light settings and stuff like that, so those will bring those in. We obviously don't have an armature or a mesh or, armature or other things in here, but these are the 3 that usually in the workflow back and forth between Unreal and Blender, these are the ones that you're using. So just out of habit, I keep those selected. You'll notice that I have like, the Kite Boy Epic guy. There's a few things in the level that I made that I did with him. So you'll want to keep these selected, and it's just, like I said, it's 90% of the time. Those are the 3. So it's just, you click on one, then shift click, and it'll select all of them. That's the only thing. The other thing too is if you have scale problems, you can adjust the scale here. There's a difference. I think Unreal uses centimeters and Blender uses meters. So sometimes if you've got scale issues when you're moving a mesh back and forth between Blender, you'll want to make some adjustments with the scale here. But in our case, we exported the mesh, we imported it. It's going to have the scale is going to be the same, so we don't need to do anything there. So anyways, long story short, select those 3, export, and you're done. It's basically overwritten that file with the one that we've just created. So we're going to go out of Blender now. And we're going to go back into Unreal. So in Unreal, again, I've got a million things going on in this project I'm working on. So I've got this folder to keep me organized, and you can see I already did this once, but I thought I'd stop and show you guys. So I'm just going to delete this and pretend that never happened. I've got a folder called Imported Assets. This is where I put everything that I've imported from Blender just to keep me organized. I'm going to create a new folder. We'll call this one, what was the name of our file? We will call it, you know what, let's just school wall for now, and then I'll rename that later, and then we'll go into the folder, right click, import the game, and then we're going to go and find that same mesh that we just created. Mine is school entrance wall. I forgot, that's what I forgot. You hit import, and then it's got all these settings up. We're going to leave ours all the same. The only one I'll point out, because I've had problems with this one, is the combined meshes. So sometimes when you're importing an asset from Blender or an FBX, and maybe you found it on free 3D assets or something like that, you'll sometimes get the meshes imported in like 12 different files. When you just like, I found this Santa sleigh that I wanted to import. I brought it in from the FBX, and I kept getting 12 different meshes, and it was a pain in the butt. You got to assemble the sled on your own. But if you check this box, it'll actually combine all the meshes that you're importing. So if you run into that problem, that's what it is. In our case, again, we've controlled this mesh the whole way. We've created it, we've exported it. We did the manipulating in Blender, so we won't need that, but we'll leave it checked. But anyways, just calling that setting out for you because you might run into that problem. Import this, and then you'll notice right away our mesh is back, but the difference is that we've got 6 materials with it. You don't need these materials. You can go ahead and delete them if you want, but I'm going to delete our original static mesh. I'm going to throw in our fancy colored wall. And I won't do it exactly right because I won't bore you with getting this perfect. But you'll notice now it's got a different color on each wall. And if I go back to what I was trying to do before, throw a brick on the outside, and let's get this office color on the inside. Boom. Okay, well, whatever. Ceiling, that's not what I'm going to use, but the point will be made. You can now see that I can have bricks on the outside and a different color on the inside. Woo! And the other thing you'll notice is the pivot point is now set in the middle. So that's great. That solved two, somewhat common problems that you'll run into. And I hope that helps people out, because that took me a few hours of watching different tutorials. Maybe not a few hours, but it took me longer than it should have, and it would have been nice to have it in one tutorial like this. So that's all. I'll wrap it up. Like I said, I've been doing Unreal for about a month, and I'm going to keep trying to add videos as I come along. I've learned a lot of other things, so if there's something, maybe I'll just run you through my level here quickly. If there's something like learning how to sit on chairs or open doors or anything else that you kind of see in this level that looks interesting, let me know. Throw something down in the comments, and I'll create a tutorial for you on how to do it. Say I create a little locker for this guy that opens. Yeah, I think that's about it. If you see something in here, if you have some other problems or things that you think I may have solved already, yeah, throw something down in the comments, and I'll be happy to make another video. I'm going to try and make one every week, maybe every 2 weeks. But as I run into problems, I'll create stuff for you. So hopefully it's helped.